Okay, before we start with the video and answer the question of the title, I want to show you this clip.
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes. I will do what I must.
You will try.
Okay, you have seen the clip. But my question, why don't we ever see that in Star Wars? Why doesn't Obi-Wan just turn off Anakin's lightsaber? Or better yet, why don't Jedi just chuck their opponents off cliffs or crush them with rocks? I mean, come on. Mace Windu literally tore through a whole battalion of super battle droids in the 2003 Clone Wars series. And yet, in the films or in the Clone Wars series, Jedi are so restrained. Why? What's going on here? Obviously, plot plays a big role here. Sure, you can't have Obi-Wan casually winning fights with a flick of the wrist, but there's more to it than that. Today, we're not only going to answer this question, but also we are going to explore nearly everything that surrounds the Force. So welcome to another episode of A Star Wars Theory and Star Wars Explained. And before we begin, I will now use the Force to force you to subscribe. Are you feeling something? Good. Now subscribe. Yeah, that was a bad joke, but let's begin with the video. But first of all, before we begin, we have to ask the question, what exactly is the Force? And also this exact same question did Luke ask Rey. And what is the answer? Watch.
What do you know about the Force?
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Of course it's wrong. We didn't expect much from Rey. But if that's wrong, what is the real answer? Here's the explanation from Luke.
It's not about lifting rocks. It's the energy between all things, a tension, a balance that binds the universe together.
Okay, but to get the full knowledge of the Force, I will also let Obi-Wan explain it for you.
The Force? The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
And because it is so beautiful, Yoda can also do it. No? It was enough? Okay, I think you understand it. Yoda can do it maybe another time, but I repeat it once again. So, the Force is what gives a Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, and binds the galaxy together. But these movies only scratch the surface. The Force isn't just some mystical energy, it's also connected to the biology of living beings. Enter the Meditorans. Yeah, the Phantom Menace didn't exactly win points with fans for introducing the concept, but Meditorans are important and canon, so we have to address it. These microscopic organisms live inside the cells of all living beings and act as a kind of conduit to the Force. Qui-Gon Jinn even described them as a key to communication with the Force.
Master, sir, I heard Yoda talking about midichlorians. I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
Midichlorians are a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells.
They live inside me.
Inside your cells, yes. And we are symbionts with them.
Symbionts?
Life forms living together for mutual advantage. Without the midichlorians, life could not exist, and we would have no knowledge of the Force. They continually speak to us, telling us the will of the Force. When you learn to quiet your mind.
So basically, midichlorians are your cosmic Wi-Fi routers. You connect to the Force via the midichlorians as you connect to the internet via the Wi-Fi router. Also, the more midichlorians you have, the stronger is your connection to the Force. And who has the highest midichlorian count? You obviously know the answer, it's Anakin Skywalker. But here's the kicker. Even if you're loaded with midichlorians, the Force doesn't always work the same way everywhere you go. Take a look at the Death Star. That place practically radiates fear, hatred and death. Also, there are basically no living beings surrounded. It's all metal and stormtroopers. And some crazy emperor. It's not just an evil weapon, it's a hotspot for the dark side of the Force. For example, during Luke's final confrontation with Vader, Luke Skywalker nearly loses himself to anger, pushed by the dark side's overwhelming presence. Palpatine didn't have to lift a finger, he just let the atmosphere do the work. and he did a bit of manipulation. And to prove this, you can look at Luke Skywalker's fighting style. He just slashes with anger and can only retreat in the end. And compare that to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. The temple helped Jedi center themselves, meditation rooms, trading spaces. It was all designed to strengthen their connection to the light. Jedi weren't just meditating because they liked the decor. The temple amplified their focus and emotional stability. Okay, I know the Jedi Temple was built on an ancient Sith temple, but let's just forget that for a moment and move on. And there's also Dagobah. The infamous Darkside cave there isn't just spooky for the sake of being spooky. It's a virgin in the Force, the place so saturated with Darkside energy that it manifests your deepest fears. When Luke enters, he's confronted by a vision of himself becoming Vader. So, yeah, location matters. The Force is influenced by the events and energy tied to a specific place. But to the location matters part, we will come back later in the video. But even more interesting is how the Force affects and is affected by its users. Jedi like to think they're in full control of the Force, but the reality is a little more complicated. The Force has a way of pushing back. Jedi are taught to harmonize with it through discipline and meditation, which is why Yoda is always going on about balance.
A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never attack.
Sith, on the other hand, take a different approach. They feed off negative emotion using anger and hatred to fuel their power. Darth Vader's ship-stopping moment in Obi-Wan Kenobi is a perfect example. He didn't just calmly focus on the Force, he unleashed his full rage to perform that feat. He hated Obi-Wan so much that he was strong enough to stop a ship from flying away. But the dark side always comes at a cost. It's addictive and it consumes those who rely on it. But here's the catch. The dark side thrives in environments where fear and suffering are present. Think about Mustafar, a planet so corrupted by hatred and destruction that it's essentially a dark side battery for Vader. Think about it. Why would Vader build his castle on the planet where he was fried and shocked? This planet was a reminder of his failure and so a source for the dark side. And meanwhile, Jedi like Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon can struggle to maintain emotional clarity in such places because their focus depends on inner peace, not chaos. It's not just about physical strength. It's a battle of internal willpower. But let's also talk about mind control for a second. The Jedi mind trick. It's one of the most famous Force abilities in the entire saga.
Let me see your identification.
You don't need to see his identification.
We don't need to see his identification.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
He can go about his business.
You can go about your business.
Move along.
Move along. Move along.
Obi-Wan calmly declares, and suddenly the stormtroopers just agree. Simple, right? And also pretty overpowered. Why not just tell the Emperor to off himself? Well, it's not so simple. Because what happens when this trick doesn't work? Some beings are naturally resistant to mental manipulation. Enter Cad Bane, one of the most dangerous bounty hunters in the galaxy. But also not Force sensitive. In the Clone Wars, Mace Windu, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan try to break into his mind to extract critical information. But Cad Bane holds his ground. 3 Jedis, including one of the most powerful warriors in the Order, can break through? How is it possible if he's not Force sensitive? And no, it's not that Bane is secretly Force sensitive, he's just incredibly disciplined. His mental strength is so strong that even the Force can't force him to talk. You get it? Let's move on. The lesson here? The Force isn't an all-powerful cheat code. Mental defenses and willpower can create powerful barriers against it. Even Jedi and Sith are immune to these limitations. And this is just one part of the puzzle. Let's take it to the physical level. You might not wonder why Yoda doesn't just rip a Star Destroyer out of the sky, but I wonder why. The guy can lift an entire X-Wing on Dagobah, but even that was a struggle. He had to focus entirely on the task, but for his age, he did a good job. But you get the point. He even says, but come on, size kind of matters. You can't just get everything done with the right technique. There's a reason we don't see Jedi or Sith casually hurling starships around like toys. The Force has physical limits. Moving large objects takes an enormous amount of concentration and energy, and there's only so much even a Grandmaster like Yoda can handle. But here's where things get interesting. In the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, Darth Vader does something shocking and phenomenal. He stops a fleeing starship in mid-air and rips it apart with the Force. How is that possible? Vader isn't exactly a calm and peaceful guy. He's consumed by rage and hatred in that exact moment. And it's those emotions that supercharge his abilities. The dark side of the Force thrives on raw, destructive energy, which is why Sith like Vader can perform feats that seem almost impossible for the Jedi. However, this emotional power comes at a price. Sith are constantly in a state of turmoil driven by their worst impulsives. It's like using adrenaline to lift a car in an emergency, impressive but unsustainable. Jedi, on the other hand, can't afford to give in into that kind of chaos. Their power depends on balance, which means they have to control their emotions instead of unleashing them. And that's why we don't see Yoda pulling a Star Destroyer out of orbit. For the Jedi, restraint isn't just a choice, it's the key to survival. But let's circle back to the question on the thumbnail. Why don't Force users just disarm their opponents more often? Kylo Ren, for example, shows that you can just use the Force to turn a lightsaber. He even turned Skywalker's lightsaber against Snoke in The Last Jedi, so why isn't that a standard move? The answer lies in the heat of battle. Manipulating an opponent's weapon takes intense concentration that can easily be broken in a chaotic fight. Jedi's focus on reactive techniques like deflecting blaster bolts because those actions are instinctive, honed by years of training. Trying to telekinetically snatch a lightsaber while your enemy is swinging at you? That's a gamble most Jedi are willing to take. One mistake and you're done for. Just imagine you are trying to get his lightsaber and then, oh, you're already dead. But there's another reason the technique is rarely used, and it's the most obvious one. Plot and storytelling. It's probably the answer you all already wrote in the comments. Imagine if Obi-Wan just force-pushed every villain off a cliff at the start of a duel. Raw credits, no stakes, no suspense. George Lucas designed the Force with narrative limits in mind. Heroes need to face real challenges that test their character, not just their powers. It's a part of the mythic structure that Star Wars draws from trials that require growth, sacrifice, and inner strength. Even characteristics like arrogance can play a role in how the Force is used, or misused. Take Snoke, for example. In The Last Jedi, he's so convinced of his dominance over Kylo Ren that he doesn't see his death coming. His arrogance blinds him to the danger right in front of him.
I cannot be betrayed. I cannot be beaten. I see his mind. I see his every intent. Yes, I see him turning the lightsaber to strike true. And now, foolish child, he ignites it and kills his true enemy.
The Force may grant extraordinary abilities, but it doesn't protect you from your own flaws. In fact, those flaws can be your downfall. And finally, we have to talk about one of the most fascinating aspects of the Force. Its connection to life. In The Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon Jinn explained that midichlorians are the key to understanding the Force. These microscopic organisms exist in all living cells, allowing beings to communicate with the Force. But midichlorians aren't just a biological curiosity. They are a crucial part of how the Force interacts with the galaxy. And as I said, we will come back to locations. Locations rich in life are often strong in the Force. Dagobah, for instance, is teeming with life despite its seary atmosphere. This abundance of midichlorians makes the planet a hotspot for Force phenomena. It's why Obi-Wan's Force Ghost can manifest so clearly there after his death. Compare that to places where Force Ghosts appear only as disembodied voices or a bit of transparent. For example, look at the planet Hoth. In The Empire Strikes Back, Obi-Wan appears as a Force Ghost to Luke, but his Force Ghost is a bit of transparent. The reason? Hoth is not so teeming with life like Dagobah. It's like in the middle when it comes to living beings. Or another example, when Luke is destroying the Death Star, Obi-Wan can only appear as a voice because in the space there are no living beings, so no midichlorians to manifest as a Force Ghost. This is also why we don't see Force Ghosts just appear and save the galaxy. Yoda could create enlightening on Arctur because this planet is so teeming with life. But Yoda couldn't appear at the Death Star to just kill the Emperor because, as I already said, in space and on the Death Star, there's so little living beings that the midichlorian count isn't enough for Yoda to manifest so strong. But I have to do a disclaimer. This is just a theory and the origin here actually comes from film theory, so I can just recommend for you to watch the original video. But now, let's move on. And this brings us to the core truth. The Force isn't a tool that can be wielded without consequences. It's a dynamic, ever-changing presence influenced by emotions, environment and life itself. Jedi and Sith approach it from opposite philosophies, but both are subject to its limits. The Force tests them, challenges them, and ultimately shapes their destinies. So what does all this mean for our original question? Why don't Jedi just use the Force to win every fight? And before we just say the reason is plot, I still have an answer to the question. Let me introduce you Force Shield or Force Barrier. What is a Force Barrier? Force Shield was both an offensive and defensive force power, exclusive to neither with the light or dark sides of the Force. They created a barrier of wall force energy around the intended target, be it self, friend or foe. So basically Jedi or Sith could create a force barrier to protect themselves or protect their weapons, so the opponent can't just throw the weapon away with the Force. Or another example, they could create a force barrier so they can't be pushed off cliffs. And this basically explains my question. Why don't Jedi just use the Force for everything, for instance for deactivating a lightsaber? So we have two answers. The first one is the lack of concentration in a chaotic battle, and the second one is Force Barrier or Force Shield. I think I forgot one. Oh yeah, the most obvious one. Plot. I think we can all agree this is the most reasonable answer to this question. So let's get to the end of the video. And now I want to hear from you. What's your favorite example of a Force ability in Star Wars? And do you think there's a moment where the Force was unutilized or misused? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And I have another thing. If you have any ideas of a video I should make, you can also drop them in the comments. They don't have to be on Star Wars, they can be on other franchises. I prefer Star Wars and Pirates of the Caribbean, but if there are any franchises I should do a video on and you have a nice idea, I can maybe make it work. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. There's plenty more to explore in this galaxy far, far away, so stay tuned. But also remember, I'm just a person, so I can be wrong. But if I'm wrong, please correct me, but please be polite. But until next time, and see you later.